It all started with a question back in Cannes this year. Has our imagination reached its limits? I mean, that does sound dangerous, doesn't it? And today we are going to pick up that thread, exploring the shifting relationship between creativity and AI, the rise of machine-aided creativity and imagination, and actually why business transformation has become a super fundamental thing to keep the businesses relevant and responsive to the pace of the change in the industry. To talk about that light-hearted topic, Chris, hello, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Chris, you are the Managing Director, Business Transformation Consulting in APAC at dentsu. So let's start with decoding that a bit. What's your daily 9 to 5 or 9 to 7:30, as we know, look
Yeah,
like?
yeah. There's no such thing as a 9 to 5. So, what business transformation is I think quite unique to Dentsu. What we do is help our clients face into their fundamental business challenges. So often that is, say, marketing adjacent, but often it's outside of marketing, and it's really helping them understand, reframe, and tackle um, issues that are going to that change the fundamental direction of their business. And I think that's why AI, being such a disruptive and fundamental technology, is at the heart of a lot of those discussions these days.
So let's circle back to that pivotal moment in Cannes this year. Obviously, that remained with me for quite some time. You started your session on business transformation with a pretty big question: has our imagination reached its limits? So, has it? And if yes, what do we do?
Well, obviously that was meant to be, and seemingly was a provocative statement.
Oh, it was. It definitely
Obviously,
was.
Cannes is such a famous celebration of creativity, but I think even in places like that, we're seeing evidence of creativity or imagination under pressure, right? The cycle times are going, business is moving faster, cycle times are moving faster, teams are under pressure to deliver. And I think there's that tension between creativity and efficiency and optimization is very real. And so it's not that imagination is disappearing, but I think that it is struggling to keep pace in an increasingly fast-paced world. And so I guess the way that plays out is it's not really like a lack of ideas or talent. It's just that our systems for innovation are still very slow and manual. And with tight timelines and pressures, it means that we don't necessarily always have time to deeply explore problems. We don't necessarily have time to iterate. Yes, there's tons and tons of data everywhere, but very rarely are we able to feed those insights effectively into a creative process to generate a uniquely creative input. So certainly, imagination isn't reaching its limits. I think it's just we risk flattening its potential because of the pace of business today.
Is that us saying that we don't have enough time to be the better or maybe the best imaginative and creative versions of ourselves, working against the deadline?
It's not. I think it's not that we don't have the time. It's just that we need to carve the time, and we need to find the inefficient parts of the creativity process, find ways to accelerate them, so we can focus on the things that really matter. And I think that's where technology has an opportunity to, as this is sort of automate some of the more manual processes, to synthesize and bring together data and insight in a way that can provide focused inputs into that human creative process and make it so that you can carve time to be creative in today's hectic lifestyle.
That is a pretty optimistic view on how AI can actually boost and fuel creator economy, let's say. But many people, opposite to that, think that AI actually threatens creativity. You're arguing instead, and you've done that in Cannes, that the real challenge is how we actually structure innovation. That's an interesting one. So could you please talk me through how, or like rather what we're getting wrong about the relationship between AI and human imagination?
Sure. I think most people see AI. It's even right there in the name, right? Generative AI. That it's all about generating outputs. And it's funny. I sort of go back and forth between thinking that it will completely revolutionize and disrupt everything from a creative standpoint. But then I realized that as you watch the cycles of this, you come up with this fabulous new technology and it dials back. You come up with another wave of even more impressive technology, people play with it and it dials back. And I think the reason that is that it's very difficult to write a single prompt or a couple of prompts that are going to express that creative process itself as well, right? And so you make it something that has a quick pop of what appears to be creativity, but that underlying thought behind it, the underlying prompt, for lack of a better word, is missing. So I think, like, in reality, we're almost using AI as a shortcut rather than a collaborator. And we've taken these tools, we've plugged them into old workflows, and that are already optimized for speed, and it maybe makes those things faster. But it doesn't really drive creativity. And I think if we want to make AI as a partner or a collaborator in creativity, rather than it necessarily creating the outputs at the end of the process, it's actually much more effective to use it to create outputs in the middle of the process as a back and forth sort of spur for human creativity. And it's that collaboration, I think, that gets you to much more interesting outcomes.
Tool for better thinking rather than thinking replacement in general, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, who knows, right? Maybe someday you can just think of what you want and it'll magically appear in front of you. But I think we're a long, long, long way away
That'd be nice.
from that.
Oh, that'd be nice. Okay, talking about this pendulum in terms of how things are rapidly developing, and then sort of there's this back and forth around how it's being used. So in 2024, I'm sure you remember, generating ideas was the top use case for the general use of AI by general public. In 2025, and I don't know whether that's disturbing or cool or wonderful or what, it like generating ideas moved down to number 6 in that list, and the top of the list was therapy and companionship. Uh, so why is that, you think, and how should that impact the way businesses actually think about using AI in whatever they do? Should businesses start using AI for therapy? Maybe. I don't know.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do. So I think there's probably a couple reasons for that. First of all, I think most people, when they first use these tools, they'll just throw a single prompt into it, kind of like I mentioned earlier, right? Draw me a juggling cat or something like that, and eventually those single prompts give you a quick sugar high of output, but it's you very quickly run out of creative ideas, and those kind of transactional interactions with AI are ultimately pretty empty. And I think if we just stick to the asking or solving problems, AI is good for solving problems when you have a dialogue with it, right? And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, a little bit more in the creative process. But it's about that back and forth and building the context and building that understanding and providing feedback to nurture a better answer. And so I think when people started using AI for business, they weren't really good at managing that conversation arc or that contextual arc that gets a better outcome from AI. So so the outputs they were getting would be just okay, right? And a little bit disappointing. Funnily enough, when you use AI for therapy, you're kind of managing that conversation arc yourself. It is a back and forth, right? And the AI is picking up context and learning more about you. So, and you're sort of managing that process and managing that conversation yourself. So that fundamentally is actually a better way to use AI. So I think just people naturally who don't think in terms of processes and workflows naturally gravitate towards, the therapy one is a humanistic process that everyone sort of understands, and they're naturally getting better outcomes from it. So I think that's probably what's driving it. Then when you see that in business, where you see the most effective AI use cases, again, it's not single magical prompts. It's not even prompt engineering. It's really where people have figured out, and it's also not just about efficiency, I should say, and about just automating something. It's about creating systems that think about the entire workflow, think about the interactions between probabilistic processes like AI, or deterministic processes, or human processes, and combine those into a process that will speed up an overarching process like innovation.
What's also interesting is just getting back to that list. People using AI is a massive behavioral scientific experiment right now, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we observe and we can see what people are asking of the internet en masse and at scale. And I guess like a part of the question is what do brands need or should do about that? Okay, if we see that people are beginning to use AI as a therapy exercise, should we then design more, I don't know, mindful applications for people to feel better? Is that anyhow impacting the way businesses think about the output of their thing, of what they're producing?
But I do think there's a related point to what you're saying around building more fundamental relationships with customers or
Mm,
consumers, right? So,
hmm
um, the therapy example is good because you are sharing a lot of information about yourself, right? And because you've shared that and the AI understands it, you're getting something back in return. And I think the opportunity for brands isn't necessarily therapy, but it's about using these tools to provide ways for their customers to share information about them and about what they care about, and not what they're buying, but why they're buying it. Well, what they truly care about, so that they can turn around and create genuinely better products or genuinely better offers for them. Now, of course, customer data and privacy, there's a lot of challenges around that, and there's a lot of trust issues around that. But I think brands that win in that space are going to be the ones that can leverage their earned trust relationship to build deeper relationships with their customers, and then use AI as a tool for delivering that relationship at scale.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So let's go back to the creativity question for a second. You describe creativity as a non-linear and hard to observe. Well, that's a tough one to crack then. Like, how can AI systems be designed to actually respect that messiness within the process instead of just oversimplifying and constraining it?
First of all, like, creativity is one of our core processes, and while it is messy and hard to pin down, it is something that people that are far more creative than me do day in, day out. And I think what we've done is sort of an artful balance between capturing the fundamental arc of that, but also keeping the people who really understand and know how to move back and forth in that arc, in that loop, and involved in it. And so it's not a linear process, as I said. It's not like a series of prompts necessarily that go left to right. It's about it's more about back and forth than left and right. So it's about feeding a wide variety of inputs and context, getting an output that humans can react to, provide feedback on, going back into the system. And it's not just a simple back and forth either. It's about how to navigate that process, how to bring clients into that process, and how to add, as I mentioned earlier, deterministic elements to that process. It's that sort of managing the end-to-end experience from an idea through to ideation, through to revision, through to testing, through to finalization, is ultimately managed by humans. It's just augmented by AI through a structured process.
So at dentsu, we built this thing, a product called AIQQQ, that combines human insight with AI flow. So apparently we're trying to tackle that problem, right? So could you talk me through how that works and whether
Sure.
it's designed to, like, I don't know, for a particular set of clients or for a particular set of needs or the industries? So again, how does that work?
Sure. So first of all, it's pronounced IQ Studio, spelled AIQQQ,
Oh, again,
as you rightly
IQ.
said.
Oh, okay.
And I
It
wouldn't think of
wasn't
it. Yeah, I wouldn't think of it as like. And I think people's mental model when you think about AI, you kind of your mind goes to a chat window or something like that, and it's not like a bot or an agent. I would think of it more as like a structured innovation platform. Um, so it's really what I was describing earlier, right? It's a process of combining human creativity with proprietary client, our proprietary data, client data, and AI in a staged workflow. So, I mean, basically the way it works is we take a whole bunch of rich inputs, and this could be anything from customer research to brand positioning to culture signals, and then from that we use AI in multiple ways, right? We use it to structure the data. We use it to generate new concepts that people can react to. We use it to pressure test them. We have a virtual panel of humans that we can set our virtual humans rather that we can test concepts against. Through the use of personas, we can even ask them questions about products. But I think the important thing, as I was hinting at earlier, is that human teams are involved at all points, right? Has the system understood the data properly? Is there more context that's missing? Do these ideas make sense, or is another piece of information going to get a better idea? When is it ready for testing, and what are the types of questions we want to understand? It's that art of how to manage that process is where it all comes to life. And because of that, it's not a system that's designed for one industry or solving one type of problem. It's a much more flexible platform. And the strength in it is really combining that human plus data plus AI.
Do we already have any cases showcasing that creative might of this tool?
Oh yeah, sure. Some really cool ones. I got to be a little bit careful on confidentiality, but maybe just to bring home how a couple of them work. So one of them was a leading food and beverage company, right? And they were looking to drive innovation in their kind of mature customer segment. And as we were going through that process I described, gathering their insights, gathering some of our customer insights, putting that together, it became, as we started that ideation, we quickly realized that we were missing some gaps. We had some gaps in understanding customer needs, right? And so by then we went out, did some specific customer research to fill that need, plug that into our system, and through that gave us and our clients a lot more confidence that the ideas coming out of it really fully understood the need states of our customer of their customers. So in that case, ended up with a whole new kind of category to service the aging product market. In another example, in an industrial one, this one I thought was really interesting. Company developed a brand new type of technology, right? Quite revolutionary technology, but they hadn't defined how to commercialize it yet, right? So we used IQ Studio to come up with something like 130 different potential use cases. What is the core value that each of these products are deriving? And by looking at those kind of core human values, and this is something that AI is really good at when asked the right question, what's the core value of these? We were able to identify a common thread of core value that the inventors of this technology had never even thought of, right? Like an entirely new branch of use cases for this technology that would be enabled by it, right? So once we reframed that core value around delivering this, we could rerun that ideation process to say, what else would address this core value, and then identified even larger high potential segments off the back of that. So we went through the process, refined that down to I think 6 product concepts or something that we would never have reached if we hadn't kind of identified that upfront value, and then went through and tested that with our panel. And I'm happy to say we're about a year out from going to market. And unfortunately, I can't say the exact industry because it is a very revolutionary technology, but it will have the technology itself will have a big impact, but the fact that we can find a new way to unlock value from it is even more exciting.
So just in a year, we might have flying cars then.
I didn't say that.
Maybe. Right. So this conversation is about us positioning the approach of not replacing, obviously, human creativity, but augmenting human ingenuity. So let's look ahead a bit. What skills will marketers and innovators need to develop to thrive in a human and AI collaboration models to probably make it even faster and more efficient in a way.
Sure. So, I mean, I think everyone should have a core understanding of how AI works and what it's good at, what it's maybe less good at. But I mean, the answer is not for us all to become AI engineers. I think really I'd frame it as learning how to collaborate with AI effectively. And by that, I mean, being able to ask better questions, being able to curate and interpret data to point out which data is the most useful in a certain context, and really guiding AI towards insight rather than output. I think it's about getting an answer that's going to spur you to create that output rather than pushing for a finished piece of text or a finished piece of art or whatever it is. I think the other big skill, if the first one is learning how to use it, the other big skill is learning how to think of it in the context of orchestration. Right? Very rarely is someone's job to say, go create a picture, right? And generally, we all operate in processes, and often those processes aren't very well defined, depending on what industry. Certainly in marketing, processes aren't very well defined, and so being able to understand again along the value chain where data is useful, where creativity is useful, where automation is useful, and then designing and managing a system that brings the best of all those worlds. I think that sort of process lens on how we do work is going to be really important as well.
I like it very much that the first thing that really comes to mind with AI is ask better questions. And that is such a fundamentally human thing. And somehow we just realized how important it is to ask better questions, to stay away from misunderstandings and, have better, deeper conversations to actually create better work. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just with AI that we started again paying attention to that somehow.
I think you're absolutely right, and I also think the other part that's important to that is context. I mean, when we're having this conversation, I can make a lot of inferences about your context, why you're asking those questions, what you want to understand, and I can tailor my answers to that. And I think, if I bumped into you on the street and you'd ask me these same questions, my answers would be very different. And I think being able to ask the question, but also to share the context in which that answer is required is a really, really important skill as well.
Imagine we were bumping into each other in the street, just to change the context just a bit.
Uh-oh.
Hi, Chris. So I just wanted to zoom out a bit and look at the essence of what you do in terms of business transformation. That
Sure.
sounds like a big concept, right? And that's not a campaign first approach. It's not just about creating, I don't know, one-off quick advertising campaign, even if they're successful. It's a more fundamental sort of look into deeper, bigger questions within the business. And it's not even often visible to the external consumer, right? So my question to you is that, like, how and when do you realize when the client in front of you actually needs business transformation, and what that would look like in each particular case? Because I imagine it's not just a one fits all kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a great question, and I mean, if I'm honest, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the word transformation, because I think sometimes people hear that and they think, wow, that sounds very intimidating and broad and scary. And we don't mean it. Transformation doesn't have to be throw everything out and start again. I think transformation is really about finding new ways to do things and moving beyond incrementalism in the way that we go about our business. So if you kind of take that lens on it, almost all businesses require some type of transformation almost all the time.
Right. It's not
So how do we find out what those things are? I mean the broader dentsu is of course in the marketing space, and so often dentsu clients come to us with a marketing problem, which makes sense. It can be around brand performance or customers. But what we found is, and I think anyone in marketing listen to this, like when you receive a brief, very often either the brief is not quite addressing the root cause, or it's maybe symptomatic of a bigger issue that's going on. And I think that's why the extra business transformation exists, is to help clients really step back from what could be manifesting as a marketing problem and saying, you know, what's really going on in the bigger picture here. And so, I think in a lot of ways we got our start that way, with sort of reframing marketing problems with a deeper understanding of business context. But I think over time, we're tackling problems that across the broader business context. And I think marketing is a great lens and starting point still, because it's obviously, it sits at the heart of how you talk about your product, how you understand your customers. So we're always going to have a lot of marketing at PowerPlate. That is always going to be a great place to start our transformation journeys. But increasingly, actually, my work's moved into not only what we should do, but also how we should do it. And so transformation doesn't necessarily mean like blowing it up and creating a new strategy. It might be a shift in how we go to market with something, or it might be a shift in how we work together. I think what is the golden thread that ties that all together is that most of what we do, even though we have a lot of technology, like we talked about earlier, ultimately all of it is about a deeper understanding of people. Whether that's what they care about, whether that's how they make decisions, whether that's what they, how we better meet the needs. Fundamentally, it's all about identifying a root cause or human need that's not being met and addressing that through transformation.
Do you think that also illustrates a bit that marketing itself is changing, and what marketing is doing is changing, and what marketing problem is, by definition, is changing, right? So, and you can rarely pinpoint something to marketing and nothing else. Marketing is just your entry point into discovering bigger problems, discovering that better, more thoroughly. So, again, my question would probably: do you think that marketing landscape is something completely different today, things or because of AI as part of that?
Interesting. So yeah, I think marketing is kind of becoming, maybe it's always been this way, but increasingly it's like a two-speed economy, right? You've got transactional marketing that's increasingly getting automated and optimized and requiring less and less human intervention. And so there's quote unquote risk to a lot of traditional parts of marketing. But at the same time, the ability to understand your customers at scale and to create relationships at scale, as I was speaking about earlier, I think gives a brand new strength and importance of marketing. We talk about being the voice of the customer in the past, and that meant being the one who administers NPS surveys, which is helpful, but not fundamentally insightful. I think CMOs have an opportunity to really change that dynamic and truly use AI to get insight at scale, and use that insight at scale to drive change at scale and really become the change agents of businesses.
Okay, if there was one thing that brands could actually start doing today to stay relevant in this ever-changing pace of the industry, what would your advice be?
I think overall, it's to ask more questions, right? We jump into things very easily, and to ask better questions, I suppose, right? I think, we often jump into solution mode, right? We jump into writing a brief, or we jump into ChatGPT and we ask it a very simple question and get a very simple answer. But I think the most important thing for brands to do is to slow down and focus on probing and deeply understanding what you're trying to solve, right? What is it that really matters to customers? What is it really matters to our business? And what do we really not understand? What are the root causes at play here? And I think once you get that understanding and that reframing, you'll start to unlock insights and start to unlock opportunities that then AI and creative teams can work together to capitalize on. And so I think that's one thing they need to do. And the other thing is to be bold, right? And to be courageous. So I think, transformation, as I mentioned earlier, doesn't always mean blowing everything up and big disruption, but it does really mean meaningful change. And change can be difficult, change can be uncomfortable. I think, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of work I do actually ends up being in change management. just helping people embrace this. And I think the one thing constant about AI is it's going to drive more and increased change. So the people that thrive in that are going to be the ones that embrace that change, embrace new perspectives, and really thoughtfully combine what they do today with AI, so that they're not chasing incrementality, but ability to step out and achieve something bigger.
Let's embrace change, everybody. Chris, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.